Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 198 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and today is our last episode of the year, which is crazy, right? And we're almost on episode 200, which is also crazy. I feel like I just started this podcast, and now it's almost on 200 episodes. So much fun. And so much work, but it's all been worth it. I love creating these episodes for you every single week and really taking a step back and allowing you to spend some time thinking about your business is my goal, because we typically don't spend enough time doing that. And so I like to help you as a forcing function a little bit here. So that's what we are here for. And today we're going to talk about the key trends to watch in 2025 for you as an independent consultant or boutique consultancy owner. First, though, I just want to say, looking back and reflecting on this past year, what a ride it has been. And I just want to thank you so much for the part you played in that, whether you're listening to these episodes and because you're listening, it helps other people to find them. Or maybe you left a rating and a review in your podcast player, which also helps other consultants find this resource and to be more successful in their businesses, or even to be brave enough to take the leap like you have. Or maybe you downloaded my book or bought the book from Amazon. In whatever capacity we've interacted, perhaps you're a client or a past client. Whether we've met or not, or in whatever capacity we might be interacting here, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the time you put into listening to these resources and putting them into action in your business. Thank you for the emails you send me asking for me to cover certain topics that you would love to hear on these episodes. Thank you for reaching out to consider whether working together would be a good fit. Thank you for the interactions that we have on LinkedIn in whatever capacity, even if we've never met, even if we've never interacted. I want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of this community, for being an independent consultant, and for wanting to make our profession and our industry even better than it is through the dedication that you have to consulting, to your clients, and this way of working. I want to say thank you. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to an exciting year ahead with you. All right, with that, let's start a talk today about the trends that I'm seeing and looking ahead to 2025. So our agenda for today is, first, I'll give you an overview of what are the 6 trends to watch for in 2025. And then we'll talk about where did these trends come from. I didn't make them up. They come from a variety of different sources. So I'll share with you what those sources are. And then we'll talk about each of those 6 trends themselves. And then we'll wrap it up with the ways to put this episode into action. So that is our agenda for today. The companion resources that go along with this episode are, number 1, I want to remind you from last week's episode, if you haven't done so already, go download the Consultants Yearly Planning Process. It's a PDF that walks you through step by step to plan out your best year ever starting in 2025. So go download that. It's at my website, melisaliberman.com/plan. And we'll also put the link to it in the show notes. And then secondarily, there's a blog that goes along with this episode. You can go to my website, melisaliberman.com, navigate to the blog, and then you'll see it toward the top, which is Consulting Trends. If you don't happen to see it there, perhaps it's later in the year and you want to go search for it, you can always search. There's a search bar kind of on the right-hand side of that blog page. I love that place. I'm constantly searching in there for myself. So go over and search any topic you want, including consulting trends, and it will bring up likely more than one, in this case, one blog, but likely for other search terms, multiple blogs or resources for you. So it's a great tool if I don't say so myself. Okay, so with that, now that you have the companion resources, let's dive into what are those 6 trends to watch for in 2025 as you're thinking about why does this even matter? As you're thinking about the strategy for your consulting business, as you're thinking about the priorities that you want to be looking at, as you're thinking about zooming out to the big picture and what you might want to be focused on that you're not yet thinking about right now. These are the 6 trends to watch for. So it goes hand in hand with the planning that you're doing for 2025 or whatever year you're listening to this in, but gives you the really this background and other ways of thinking about your consulting business that you might not have considered. So again, I'll tell you what the 6 trends are, and then we'll dive into each one individually. So the first one is that the number of full-time independents is growing. I'll share the statistics with you and why that's actually a good thing for you here in a minute. The second trend is that generative AI and automation require a thoughtful, proactive approach for you. We'll talk about that. Number 3 is that independent consultants are starting to focus much more on longevity of their businesses. So I'll tell you what that means and how that might impact your plans and your routines. You might be thinking about your own longevity and your sustainability of keeping this business up through going through its ups and downs. Number 4, we'll talk about the future of work, which continues to increase opportunities for independent consultants. Number 5, we're going to talk about the trend where we're starting to see software specifically designed for independent consultants and boutique consultancies. As the number of independent consultants grow, now we're seen as a market for other providers. And so we're starting to see really fit for purpose type solutions being built for us, which is so amazing. And then number 6, independent consultants are building consortiums. So we'll talk about what that means and how that might impact you and your business. Okay, so now let's dive into each of these individually. First, we're going to talk about where they came from. So the 6 trends that I just shared with you, which we're going to dive into here in detail in a moment, came from 5 or so different sources. And by that, I mean my research in my day-to-day and weekly interactions. This is what bubbled up in terms of those top 6 trends. There are many more other trends, but those top 6 trends are what I just shared with you. So where do these trends come from specifically? Number 1, the State of Independence Report, which is published every year by MBO Partners. This is the 14th year that they've published it. So they hire a researcher to do this work every year and really putting in that effort to capture data points and trends and be able to provide those types of analytics and statistics to us. So that's the first place that these trends have come from. The second is I'm in part of a future of work forum that's made up of platform and marketplace founders and CEOs and other leaders from those organizations. So these multitude of platforms that are out there that are targeted at helping enterprise clients to find the independent consultants and freelancers to support their businesses. There's a forum where they all come together. We meet twice a month and talk about trends in the industry. And they have such a viewpoint and perspective into the trends because they are building platforms that represent hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in some cases of independent consultants and freelancers. So that is another input for these trends. I also have relationships with data aggregators, those several software companies that provide services to enterprise clients, again, who find and manage all of their external workforce. And so through those relationships, some of these trends have bubbled up. And then I often have conversations with consortium founders. So there are so many consulting consortiums. We talked about that as trend number 6 that are starting to pop up as in having conversations and relationships with many of them. Some of these trends have been augmented through those conversations. And then finally, talking to hundreds of independent consultants throughout the year, either clients that I work directly with in a very intimate setting in terms of coaching, consultants that I meet that are on my calendar on a daily basis, and speaking to consultants in audiences of independent consultants and talking with them in Q&A session and in the chat and those types of things. All of those conversations really add up over the course of the quarter, of the year, and start to highlight trends that are going on in the industry. So that is where these trends have come from, a compilation of all of those things. You probably know this, but I live and breathe independent consulting. I am incredibly passionate about making this a mechanism by which we can build our own careers, by which we can really have ownership and autonomy over our professional life. And that's why I am so embedded into this topic. So that's where these trends have come from. So with that context in mind, let's start diving into each of the trends. The first trend is that the number of full-time independents is growing. This is specifically from that State of Independence report that I referred to earlier. It is by MBO Partners. We'll put the link to it in the show notes. But what they found this year is that, and they do these studies year over year for 14 years, I think is this one's the 14th. What they found this year is that full-time independents, so full-time as opposed to part-time independents or kind of people doing side gigs, if you will, full-time independents grew 6.5%. to 27.7 million in 2024 in the last year. That's up from 26 million in 2023. So that's roughly 1.7 million additional independents that have joined our forces. And full-time independents now make up 16.7% of the 165 million Americans in the workforce. So we're talking about the US right now, but similar trend across Europe. And this is starting to grow in Asia and also in the Middle East. What we're seeing is year over year over year, the increase in full-time independents, people who are like us, who are running and growing independent consulting businesses. And the impact here for you and your business and what you want to be thinking about as you're thinking about your own goals and your own strategies for managing and growing your consulting business. On the face of this, you might be concerned that when you're thinking about the growth in independent consultants, it might mean more competition, that it might be getting harder for you to land work. But what I would say to you from the data points that I see in talking, especially with those data aggregators, it's actually the opposite. As more consultants grow, as the number of independent consultants grow, what we're starting to see is that there are more opportunities for independent consultants. It's growing in lockstep. As the number of independent consultants grow, it means that also enterprise clients and mid-sized clients and startup clients are more aware of, more open to you leveraging independent consultants to do the type of work that you do. So even though there's a larger pool potentially for them to pull from, what we're seeing is there are more opportunities because this is becoming so much more of the norm as opposed to something that's really unique and difficult to get approval for internally, for example. So thinking about it that way, rather than being fearful that the number of full-time independents is growing, it means that even for you, as you're talking with your ideal clients, there likely is less education that has to occur about what it is that you do as an independent consultant and how that might differ from what they're used to doing from a resourcing perspective. The other thing that the number of full-time independents, that growth in the number of full-time independents is creating for you is that now there's a larger pool of resources to engage when you're looking for subcontractors or referral partners or teaming type consultants. So again, as that pool of independents grows, other independents, it creates a lot of opportunity for us. And so thinking of it and seeing it that way from a place of abundance rather than scarcity can really set you up for success. All right, now let's dive into trend number 2, which is generative AI and automation are here to stay. Obviously, they're changing so quickly and rapidly the way that we do business, the way that our clients do business. And so, again, this may seem on the face of it a threat. For some of us, we worry that our expertise may be taken over by AI, that what we do is no longer needed or can be replaced by AI in some way. It can be threatening in the sense of, will companies, our ideal clients, be able to leverage AI to do so much of the work that right now requires so many human resources. And so therefore kind of the overall number of people, whether they're full-time or consultants, may reduce. And what I would offer to you is, while this can be true in some ways, there are things it's crazy what you can accomplish and what use cases people and companies are figuring out on a day-to-day basis. Everything from analyzing data to number crunching to writing documentation, all of those kinds of things, right? But at the same time, if we look at this as an opportunity and think about it for your perspective, there's a few things that I would recommend that you start to think about and really purposefully, intentionally start to think about, how can AI be folded into your overall business strategy? And those opportunities are both external facing. The first one is external facing, the second is internal facing. By that, I mean, the first is think about and take this opportunity to be more strategic about, where does AI fit into your service offerings? Where are you incorporating and talking with your ideal clients when you're going through the discovery process to a proposal about leveraging AI, about folding it into the strategy that you might be recommending to them? And so incorporating AI very purposefully and intentionally into your offerings in a way that helps set you up in a more strategic way, and helps you to move away from doing and having that type of hands-on work that most of us want to get out of that path. It's so common as an independent consultant. You might be way down in the weeds doing a lot of execution. This gives you an opportunity to start elevating yourself into a more strategic direction when you're able to incorporate AI into your offerings. For example, helping clients to figure out what their AI strategy as it relates to your own function, helping clients to work through the ethics, that the data security impacts, workflow impacts, the impacts to roles and responsibilities, the impacts to their workforce. I mean, there's so many different ways that AI impacts each and every individual client that we work with. The more you can integrate that and be talking with your clients about best practices and helping them to see what they might not yet be thinking about, helps to elevate you and demonstrate even more how capable you are in helping them with things like their strategy. The second component thinking about AI is looking at it internally for you. How can AI help you to make your work more efficient and more effective, and starting to evaluate tools in addition to what you've already done, and workflows and processes for yourself to make running of your business easier. So put those two activities on your strategy for the year if you haven't already, to think about how can you incorporate AI into what you're selling and the way that you're delivering for your clients. Use it as an advantage for yourself instead of feeling as though it's a threat. Okay, trend number three is that independent consultants are focusing more and more on the longevity and sustainability of their businesses. And you may fall into this same bucket as well. You may have just started your business and wanting to make sure that it is a sustainable endeavor. Or you may be in your business for the last 10 years and feeling a little bit burned out, or somewhere in between. No matter where you're at, this is a really important aspect of running an independent consulting business or a boutique consultancy, because you oftentimes are wearing so many hats. And the ups and downs of running a business, especially as an independent consultant, can take that emotional toll. The ongoing fear and self-doubt and overwhelm and second guessing can really take a toll and lead to burnout and questioning about whether you can hack it as an independent consultant the long term, or if you want to be running this type of business in the long term, because it feels really heavy at times. And this is really important to recognize, that you're not alone in this situation if you're feeling this way, as so many consultants are, and that it's important to put strategies in place in order to protect yourself as an asset. You are the asset in your business. Putting those processes in place, those tools and mechanisms in place to protect you as the asset is really important because it benefits not only yourself, obviously, but your business and ultimately your end clients when you're protecting yourself as your number one business asset. And that looks like really putting a specific plan in place that will help you to achieve whatever your version of work-life balance is, for example. It looks like putting a specific plan in place to proactively mitigate that emotional toll, to avoid having such high peaks and low valleys as you're running your business. Having a proactive mental modeling process where you're able to help redirect when you get into those spots where you're feeling frustrated or discouraged or you've been ghosted and you're questioning what you did wrong. All of those types of things, unless you have those mechanisms in place to manage from the mental side of running this business, it's going to be really challenging for you to sustain this in the long run. So that's the third trend, is putting those tools and mechanisms in place for yourself, for your business, to protect you as the asset and your mental well-being as well as your physical well-being, so that you can avoid that burnout and that questioning as to whether or not you could do this in the, really sustain this in the long run. Trend number 4 is the future of work continues to increase opportunities for independent consultants. This goes along with what we were talking about in trend number 1. As the number of consultants increases, it doesn't mean that the competition, it's harder to land roles and engagements. What it actually means is enterprise clients, mid-sized clients, startups are becoming more and more it's a forcing function for them to really think about what is their independent consulting strategy? What is their strategy for leveraging an external workforce? And to start thinking about that, because more and more, as more of us leave the traditional workforce, that expertise goes with us. And in a lot of cases, it's difficult for those enterprise clients and those companies to hire the type of expertise and gain access to the type of expertise that we have. So the more of us that come over to this side in terms of being our own employer, the more that companies have to look at this in terms of their strategy to fulfill their resourcing needs. And so with that, because the future of work is being reshaped on a yearly basis, it opens up the opportunity for independent consulting and is becoming more of a standard practice rather than an exception. And so the impact for you is that it's becoming less necessary in a lot of cases to sell a potential client on the idea of engaging you as an independent consultant. As we talked about a little bit earlier, there's less of a need to educate on this type of engaging you as an independent consultant. And then it opens up the opportunity to talk so much more about the impact and the value and the outcomes that those clients are wanting to achieve. Clients are starting to see more and more with each year that goes by, each quarter that goes by, that there is so much expertise out here with us, living with us as independent consultants. And it's no longer just thought of as staff augmentation anymore, that contractors that help them to get an extra pair of hands when they need one. We have the expertise. And so this is allowing you, as the future of work continues to increase opportunities for independent consultants, it can allow you to focus more on recommendations that you're making to your clients, those advisory relationships that you're creating with your clients, and less on reassuring them that engaging an independent consultant is an effective strategy for them. Now, let's take this trend specific to you. You may be in an industry or in a function where this is very prevalent and applies to you. And in some cases, you might be in more of a lagging industry where it does still require more education. But please know that it won't be forever. It won't be forever, even if you are working with ideal clients who are in more of a lagging industry in terms of adoption of independent consultants. This is becoming more and more mainstream with each and every year that goes by. All right, trend number 5. There are software platforms and services that are designed specifically for independent consultants and boutique consultancies, and that is growing. As our market grows, we purchase services, we purchase software, and as the number of independent consultants grows, our buying power increases as well. Potential clients or potential providers and providers see us as a market that they can capture. And so as you think about that, it's important to stay on top of this trend and continuously look out for those type of fit for purpose type solutions that are built specifically for us as independent consultants. So it helps us to create shortcuts in our businesses. It helps us to become more efficient and ultimately to be more effective at what we do. We've had a few of these on the podcast in the last year, including lettuce.co that does bookkeeping services for independent consultants that helps independent consultants to set up S Corps in the US to reduce tax burden, those types of things. There's also One Page CRM that we talked with Gosha, the co-founder of that solution, in December of 2024, and she shared their thought process as they were building this particular CRM in a way that works so powerfully for businesses of one. And there are so many platforms and marketplaces out there that are focused on helping independent consultants to find and get matched up with enterprise clients and mid-sized clients. Some are more broad, some are very specialized, but every day, every month, every quarter, there's new solutions popping up. And because it's becoming a growing market, that will only continue to expand. I shared a few of those resources with you, but keep looking for those types of solutions. And of course, I'll bring them onto the podcast as well as I uncover those solutions that are great for our types of businesses. And then finally, trend number 6, independent consultants are building consortiums. Solo consulting can be lonely. As you are probably well aware, it can be really lonely. And for some of us, not everyone, some of us like being solo, but for a lot of us, we do like to have other colleagues to work with, especially if they're in complementary capacities where we're all serving similar type of clients, but working in complementary capacities so that we can build relationships with our ideal type of client and then bring them solutions that come from other service providers that we know and trust that can help to make that client more successful in different ways. And so for you, you want to be thinking about, is a consortium the right answer for you? Or is it something that maybe you don't want to think about right now, but know that this is a growing trend, that these are loose consortiums. They're not fully baked out, legally formulated partnerships. And the reason why I love them and see so much value in them is that they are loosely created. There are, of course, rules of engagement and financial terms that need to be put in place. But with this type of consortium, a lot of times it can be built in a way that isn't so formalized and rigid as a partnership that ultimately, if it doesn't work out, it's kind of the equivalent of going through a divorce. And it can be really messy and almost feel as if you're starting over. In the consortium model, you can come together with other consultants who work in similar industries as you do, or in the similar target client that you do, and have the ability to share those leads and bring each other in, or potentially pull in capacity when you need it, in a very creative and flexible way. And when you don't love working with someone, you don't have to work with them on another engagement. Or when you find someone that you really enjoy working with and your style really meshes well, you can continue collaborating. It's a really flexible approach to having that model where you can expand capacity as you need to, handle scenarios where you create more demand than you can personally support, and also to help you lighten the load of business development. So it's something for you to consider. And this is a growing trend that I see and work with and provide in some speaking for a handful of these, I should say, consortiums. And I can see that continuing to grow as well. So as we wrap up here today, those were the 6 trends to be watching out for in 2025 and to really build into and be thinking about as you're contemplating and deciding upon what your strategy will be for for this coming year. And so wrapping this episode up, I want to do 2 things. Remind you to download the yearly plan, which is at melisaliberman.com/plan. And then finally, I'll remind you that you can also get one-on-one help from me. That I work with independent consultants in a private coaching relationship where we really get clear on what your goals are, what your blockers are to achieving those goals, and help you to put a very specific plan in place that works for you, that works for your ideal client, and works for the type of business you want to build so that you ultimately break past whatever plateau you might have hit, or if you're brand new, you set a really strong foundation from which to grow. So if you're interested in getting that type of one-on-one, individualized, personalized help, you can go book a call with me at consultmelisa.com and we can figure out if coaching together would be a good fit. Thank you for tuning in today, and I will see you in the new year. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.